The morning after is always difficult. It's a strange feeling when there's been a high, emotional, spiritual, and then there's kind of this void. And I always feel it personally, acutely, after Purim. Maybe this year more than ever, I don't know. But kind of, as Purim ended, there was kind of this empty feeling of, now what? Now what? And I'd like to address that and actually tied in with the tragic event of this week's parasha, which is the untimely passing of Nadav and Avihu during a high point, the inauguration of the service in the Mishkan, and take it from there, and there'll be a common denominator, as you will see in a moment. Tonight's shir is dedicated in memory of the neshama of my late mother-in-law, Simrani Bat Shlomo. The last Kaddish for her was said 11 months concluded today, and my two brothers-in-law said Kaddish for the last time at Mincha. It happens to be her mother-in-law's Yortzeit today. That's Chana Bat B'Tzalel Yaakov. So this year dedicated Leilu Nishmas, both Simmer Rania Bat Shlomo and Chana Bat B'Tzalel Yaakov. So we have Purim, we're on a high, and then Purim ends. So perhaps to put things in perspective, I'm going to share with you a story. It's a story about Reb Moshe Israels, otherwise known as the Ramah. Moshe Israels, or the Ramah, wrote many books. He wrote many, many books. He's probably best known for his glosses and comments on the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch was written by Yosef Karo. Of course, he was a Sephardi, lived in Tzfat, and therefore the Shulchan Aruch rules according to what is the Sephardi halacha. And there's certain areas of Jewish law where Ashkenazi law differs. The Moshe Israels initially wanted to write his own Shulchan Aruch. Long story. Eventually, rather than write a Shulchan Aruch of his own, he made notes on the Shulchan Aruch of Yosef Karo, where the Ashkenazi practice differs from the Sephardi practice. He's buried in Krakow, and I don't know how well you can see this because they've put a grill in front to protect, so you can't really see the tombstone very well. But let me point just over here to the date of his passing, Beyom Gimel Lamed. He actually died on Lag BaOmer, Lamed and Gimel, Lag BaOmer, 33rd day of the Omer. He died, we're told, at the age of 33, and he wrote 33 books. So somehow that number 33 is connected very much with his life. And when it came to his funeral, the officiating eulogizer, I'm not sure who it was, that hasn't been transmitted as part of the story, but the eulogy was given at his funeral that included 32 attributes. And the eulogizer very much wanted to round that up to 33, which kind of fits in with the theme of his life, of the books he had written, and of the date. But he was stuck. He didn't have a 33rd. And then an old man came up and said, well, he'd like to contribute. Praise number 33. And it goes as follows. Reb Moshe Israels had this very interesting practice at the end of Purim. Now, what happens at the end of Purim? People have a happy day, and they run around, and they're merry, and many a Jew has gone to sleep at the end of Purim, and and you think I'm going to end the sentence with inebriated, well, that too, perhaps. But many a Jew has gone to sleep at the end of Purim, forgetting to do Ma'ariv. This is what Rav Moshe Israel used to do. And initially, I heard the story with a one version, and then I heard a more accurate version, which I prefer. He used to go around knocking from door to door to remind people to do Ma'ariv, is how I heard the story originally. But in fact, the more accurate version, when I looked into this, was he used to go from house to house and said, "May I please come in and ask you for a bit of water to wash my hands? Because before you daven, you have to wash your hands, with a bit of water." So he would knock on doors and say, "Can I please come in?" But he would disguise himself, so nobody would recognize him. So he looked like, some hobo or somebody who had had too much to drink or whatever it was, it being Purim, and he would then say to the host of the home, "Please, would you just give me a little bit of water? I'd like to wash my hands so that I can daven Ma'ariv." And that was his subtle way of reminding the host, if he hadn't daven Ma'ariv, because to accuse him or to simply say right out, you need to daven Ma'ariv, it's Purim, but you still need to daven Ma'ariv, that, may not have gone down as well. But to subtly say, I need some water because I haven't daven Ma'ariv yet, I want to wash my hands, would remind people that they have to quit themselves. This is important obligation. Now, why do I share the story? Because as Purim ends, one can't just go to sleep, albeit on a high, whatever kind of high it could be, spiritual or spirit-induced, but you can't just go to bed. You've got to make sure that the high of Purim, and it's a very powerful high. I mean, we're told that Purim is equal in spiritual value to Yom Kippur. In fact, they say that Yom Kippur or Yom Kippurim is also to be understood as Yom Kippurim, a day like Purim. So Yom Kippur is compared to Purim. Purim is a model, and Yom Kippur is the copy. So clearly, a high spiritual day, and we got to take the energy that comes out of Purim and immediately imbue that into the mundane, into the routine. So that was the Ramah, taking the high of Purim and translating it straight into the routine night prayer, Ma'ariv prayer that one recites at the end of every single day of the year, be it the holiday or be it a weekday. This is how we conclude our day with that Ma'ariv prayer. So that's the story of the Ramah and Purim, the high being brought into our lives. And I want to take you to the tragic story of this week's parsha, and it's day 8. That's what the parsha is called, Shmini. Day 8 of the erection of the Holy Mishkan for 7 days. Moshe Rabbeinu put up the Mishkan, took it down at the end of the day. Put up the Mishkan, took it down at the end of the day. Day 8 is when the service in earnest begins, and now for the first time, a divine fire has come down onto the altar to signify Hashem's presence there in the Mishkan. There was great concern whether Hashem would accept it, because of course the Mishkan was built as atonement for the golden calf, and Aaron was to serve as high priest, but Aaron had a pretty compromising role in the building of the calf and the worshiping of the calf. So Aaron being accepted as Kohen Gadol, high priest now, and God's presence being felt in that Mishkan would be the ultimate sign for the Jewish people that his presence had rested. And that's the end of chapter 9. It's the 8th day. Hashem's fire comes down onto the altar. And the beginning of chapter 10 is the tragic event that you can see in front of you now, when Nadav and Avihu take their pan, put fire in it, place incense in it, and they bring a foreign fire. And the result is that a divine fire comes down, consumes them, and they die before Hashem. Now, one thing that's going to be made very clear is that we're talking about people of a very high caliber. We're not talking about, kids, little boys that went to daddy's workplace on the first day of the inauguration of new premises, and they started playing with a photocopying machine and they broke it. We're talking about, first of all, adults, they weren't kids, and second of all, people of an extremely high caliber, because this is how Moshe describes them in verse 3. He says, Hashem said to me, I'll be sanctified through those who are near me, and clearly that's them. As Rashi says, I didn't know who is near Hashem, but clearly they are the ones that Hashem calls Karavai, or the ones that are near me, and those are the people that Hashem has chosen as his holy ones on that very holy day. So we're not talking about people who simply have no regard, no respect. We're talking about people of a very high caliber. And this gives rise to a lot of debate as to actually what went wrong and what was the issue with the behavior of Nadav and Avihu. You saw the mention of the foreign fire. There is a view that what they've done wrong is actually brought a fire in. That the only fire that should be used in the Mishkan, in this tabernacle, is a fire that came down from Hashem. It was the Eish Tamid, was the perpetual flame that burnt on the altar always, and all flames were lit from that flame, including incense. I mean, in truth, they had no business, bringing incense. They had not been appointed to do that, particularly as it appears that they had gone into the Holy of Holies, where they didn't belong, and that was where only their father, Kohen Gadol, could go, and only once a year on Yom Kippur, and that's going to be expounded upon in the portion actually called Achremot, following the death, even though it's not the exact next chapter in the Torah. We're going to be reading it in a couple of weeks, but it's a powerful portion because it describes how and when one may go into the Holy of Holies, and under what circumstances and who. So, they kind of didn't respect the limits of the temple. There are opinions that the problem was that they had not married, and somehow they wanted the mistaken notion that spiritual life is one that is accompanied by celibacy, and therefore chose not to marry, thinking they could reach a higher spiritual level. There is a view that they had made halachic rulings and decisions despite the presence of their father and, of course, Uncle Moshe Rabbeinu, and they should never have made decisions of that nature, in under such circumstances, with everybody there as they were. So we actually found as a final opinion that, in fact, they were, inebriated when they came in. And that's based on the fact that immediately, here's verse 3, but in verse 8, Hashem says to Aaron, don't drink wine, and that will save your life, and eternal statutes for all generations. So from the juxtaposition of this instruction, it would appear that this may have been what they had done. So a lot of debate, a lot of discussion. There's no finality. Commentaries go back and forth discussing what this is a particularly, interesting one, because often people talk about achieving spiritual heights through altered states of consciousness, and many people have chosen to what was then alcohol, and is today, various other mind-altering substances that create an altered state that opens you up, they say, spiritually. And it seems that was already negated way back at the beginning of Jewish history, so to speak, when the approach of Nadav and Avihu, if this is what they had done, was absolutely and totally negated. It's not about achieving, artificial highs, and in that way can become closer to Hashem. We tend to, maybe this is the key to understanding what went wrong here. Make a confusion and mistake, and I've mentioned this before, between emotional elevation and spiritual elevation. By definition, they talk, for example, in the Havdil, in medicine, about high blood pressure being a silent killer. Why? Because you can't feel your blood pressure. It's completely silent. Okay, you're not aware of it. Okay, you can put on a cuff and you can measure it. And some people say that if you're lightheaded or whatever it is, but generally speaking, it's not something that you can be aware of or feel that the blood pressure is elevated. You cannot, unless you are a very spiritual person, a great tzaddik, you're not in tune with your neshama. Your neshama, you are your body, a boorish body that obscures the shine of the soul, and you don't really perceive your soul. And therefore, when your soul resonates with Hashem, it's not something which is perceived. What we perceive sometimes is elevated emotional states, where we feel moved. But you can also feel moved by walking to the top of Signal Hill and sitting over there, Lion's Head, and sitting over there in a circle and singing Kumbaya, and that feels absolutely amazing. And you're going to come back and say, what a spiritual experience. No. What a moving, emotional, shared moment. Let's not confuse them. So one can reach altered states of consciousness emotionally through all kinds of substances, but that doesn't necessarily make for a spiritual experience. But coming back to trying to find maybe a common denominator between all of the possible alleged offenses by Nadav and Avihu, we come up with one theme. Yes, they intensely wanted to be close to God. They really wanted to be close to Hashem. But they wanted to do it on their own terms. And that cannot be done. That cannot be done. Hashem has given us very clear rules of how we establish a connection with Him. They're called mitzvot. And the word mitzvah is from the word tzavta in Aramaic. It means connection. So a mitzvah allows you a connection, a bond with Hashem. And He gave us the rules. He gave us a book with 613 of those rules. And if we follow that, we can achieve absolute connection to the ultimate optimized way that a human can achieve connection with Hashem. We don't like it because we don't like rules. We don't like to follow rules. That's not human. Humans like to be rule breakers. Humans like to be free. Rules are restrictive, and rules are always perceived to be applied to us from a different dimension, from above, from higher. We don't like authority. We like to be our own authorities. We don't like authority which is above us. And if you look at all the suggestions for what was wrong with Nadav and Avihu's offering of this foreign fire, it all boils down to the following. They wanted to achieve an ecstatic connection with Hashem on their own terms. Yes, there are rules, but today is the opening day of the Mishkan. This is the tabernacle where people can come in and they can gaze at the presence of Hashem today is a special day, this is a special place, and let's break the rules and let's go as deep in as we can, all the way into the Holy of Holies, and let's bring our own fire and not use a fire, and maybe let's alter our state of consciousness somewhat by imbibing in certain substances, and let's not follow the rules that say that we have to be family men, and within the confines of a family establish closeness with Hashem. No, we're going to choose something higher, which is celibacy. And we're not going to ask the old men for their opinion, because uncle and dad, they're God people, but they follow his instructions. We want to achieve, and the Orach Chaim, the Holy Orach Chaim, describes in his commentary the closeness that they want to make. Unfortunately, I couldn't find an English text, but he uses 10 terms to express the sweetness and the delight and the love that they had for Hashem. It was all motivated by a desire to be close to Hashem. But religion is not about establishing a connection with Hashem on your own terms. And why is that? It's because religion is about establishing a relationship with something which is beyond our terms. It's about touching the infinite, touching heaven. How do you do that? Only on heaven's terms, not on your own. You can only reach on your own terms as far as your own grasp. Okay, and your grasp doesn't go very high, because that's it. That's about as high as you can go on your own grasp. There's got to be the hand that comes down and touches yours and creates that bond. But then you've got to raise your hand in the direction, in the way that big hand above has instructed you to do. And if you want to work on your own terms, then you can achieve a very limited connection with Hashem. You can actually achieve further if you follow the rules. It's the same in any relationship. It's the same in any relationship. I mean, a couple. You can't establish a relationship with your significant other on your own terms. I mean, I had an in-law who used to go to the bakery and bring back a certain pastry, I forget whatever it was, and offer it to hide the identity. I will not even reveal the gender, to her spouse, and the spouse didn't like that particular pastry. And eventually he said, I really appreciate it, but I don't like it. Why don't you bring me something else? And name the kind of pastry. If it was chocolate or custard or cream, whatever it was. I don't recall the details, and they're irrelevant. Next day, the spouse arrives with the same baked good as previously. And to the consternation of the significant other, the explanation is, but it looked so good. Yeah, it looked good to myself, but not to the other. So establishing a relationship with another person is not doing what you like or what you think they should like. You think they should like custard donuts, so you're going to buy them and say it's good. No, I like it, but my spouse may not. It's about understanding the other party's terms and acting within that framework. A relationship with Hashem is not on our terms. So we say, well, I think this makes me feel good. This makes me feel spiritual. And therefore, I'm going to do it this way. Hey, there have been attempts at changing Judaism to, minimize the rules and maximize the feel good. So if tefillin are merely a way of feeling connected to God, not of being, of feeling connected to God. And nowadays we're far more sophisticated than that. Then we've got to reform our practice to the extent that tefillin now belong in a display case in the entrance to the temple, and with a plaque that says, "This is how Jews in the olden days felt that they could achieve connectedness with Hashem. Nowadays, please enter into the main sanctuary, sit down, close your eyes, and go, and maybe you will feel close to God. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. Tefillin are not something that we think makes us feel. Tefillin actually create a connection with Hashem because He commanded it to us. So a connection with Hashem is created through actually following the rules that He gave us. And a religion without a framework, that's not a religion that can maximize it. And then there's another danger, probably not for you and me and most of the people participants. I don't know what everyone's spiritual level is. But let me tell you what the danger is. If you are Nadav and Navi, if you're a great tzaddik, you don't follow the rules, then you go on a one-way trip, which is precisely what happened to them. You reach an ecstatic connection with God, but you don't have a way of coming down. So you remain up there. And then your soul's left your body, and there you are, lying, unfortunately, with your body lying on the ground in the newly consecrated temple, because you've gone by your own rules, and you've gone far too high because maybe you're a great tzaddik, and you reaches beyond yours and mine. So you went too high. You went and left you permanently, and of course that's dangerous. So we've got to reach the highs. The highs are very important. We can't just, live a life of routine. We got to make sure that our lives translate into back into a routine. I mean, you've probably all done this lots of times. Now here's the irony. Did you think of how robotic that action was as you click tick? Stop for a moment and remember, I am not a robot. I do sometimes perform the same actions over and over and over. But in my life, there are highs, there are Purims and Shabbos and moments of prayer and Yom Kippurs. There are unbelievable highs that I reach in my own personal life, but they're all within the framework of Torah. And then I come down, and Rav Moshe Israels is there knocking at my door and saying, do you have a little bit of water because I didn't have a Ma'ariv yet, reminding us that we got to go back into the routine of life. Nadav and Avihu were great people, but they went for highs, and nobody reminded them to go back into the rule. They try to create their own rules, and that didn't work for them. And so, even though they died and sanctifying Hashem's name, so to speak, but they ended up marring the celebrations by creating pain in the heart of Moshe and Aaron. And it's remarkable that Aaron was actually able to react the way he did, as it says, Vayidom Aaron, he remained silent. It's remarkable, but it was a real pain and a real sadness, reminding us that we need to reach for heaven, but that the pathway to heaven is actually one that Hashem has clearly paved for us, and that whenever we reach a spiritual high, as opposed to an emotional high, whenever we reach a spiritual high, we got to make sure to daven Ma'ariv afterwards. And on that note, for anybody who didn't get daven Ma'ariv tonight, it's on page 256 in the Arts Consider. Have a good night.
Thanks very much.